They weren't looking for anything special, just a cheap dresser. But when they carried it up the stairs, they heard something shift inside the wood. A panel came loose. Taped beneath the bottom drawer was an envelope. Inside, an old photo of a girl who looked like she wasn't supposed to be remembered. A child's necklace with the letter A and a note, written in shaky hand, that read, "She didn't drown. She was taken, and it wasn't a stranger." The girl in the photo disappeared in 1956. The woman who owned the dresser died last month, and now the couple who found it can't agree if they should have opened it at all. The photograph was small, square, and bent at the edges. It had been folded once, carefully, and tucked into the envelope like something meant to be forgotten, but not destroyed. A girl stood near the edge of a calm lake, her arms stiff at her sides, eyes locked on the camera. She couldn't have been older than 10. The dress she wore was light in color, maybe white or pale blue, but faded with age, and light. On the back, written in blue ink, were just 4 words. A.B., July 1956. There was something off about the image, something in the stillness of the girl's posture, as if she had been asked to smile but didn't. Her expression wasn't. Frightened but distant, like she had already been pulled out of the moment long before the shutter clicked. They didn't know who she was, not yet. But something about her felt wrong. Not in her appearance, but in the way her picture had been hidden, taped beneath a drawer. You don't tape photos of loved ones there. You tape away secrets. The dresser, once just old furniture, was now something else entirely. A container of a story someone had tried to bury. And this girl in the photo, A.B., was at the center of it. Her name was Alice Bennett. In July of 1956, she vanished during a family picnic by Summer Lake. The official story was that she wandered into the woods and got lost. A search followed, brief, limited, and poorly documented. No witnesses, no belongings found, no body recovered. Her family moved out of town the following year, leaving behind a house full of silence. Public memory faded, but the few who remembered spoke of tension in the family, of stories that didn't match, and of a cousin who was strangely never mentioned again. The only consistent detail was that Alice had been wearing a white dress and a gold necklace with an A charm. Years later, the name still surfaced in fragments, in genealogy forums, in quiet rumors, but the case had never officially closed. It had simply grown cold. Until now, because the photo found in the dresser was the exact image used on Alice's original missing poster. The same one, now hidden under wood and time. And the person who owned the dresser, Alice's aunt, the woman who outlived everyone involved, and who never once spoke of a niece. The note had been folded in half twice and tucked behind the photograph in the same envelope. It was written in cursive, shaky and uneven, as if the hand that wrote it had aged or trembled. There was no salutation, no name at the end, just a single chilling sentence. She didn't drown, she was taken, and it wasn't a stranger. It was the kind of message that felt too precise to be fiction, yet too vague to be trusted. There was no date, no context, no indication of who had written it or when. The ink was smudged in places, as if handled by nervous fingers or exposed to moisture long ago. They compared the handwriting to old letters found in the house from the woman who had owned the dresser, hoping for a match. But it didn't align. The loops and angles were different, which meant the note wasn't hers, or she hadn't wanted it traced to her. The strangest part was the envelope itself. It had never been sealed, no stamp, no address. It was never mailed, just stored, hidden, beneath a drawer no one was supposed to check. As if it had been prepared for someone specific, someone who would only find it by accident. But who was the she? Alice, presumably. And if she didn't drown, like the official story suggested, then why had her family accepted it so easily? Why had the town allowed the story to slip into legend without questions? Someone knew more. Someone had watched it happen or carried the truth and left this breadcrumb for someone else to follow. But the message wasn't a confession. It was a riddle, one that had waited decades to be read. They had already examined the entire dresser once, but something about the craftsmanship didn't sit right. It was too heavy for its size, too dense, as if holding something it wasn't meant to. The middle drawer stuck slightly when opened, and when they removed it fully and examined the space behind it, they found a thin wooden panel that didn't match the surrounding frame. A gentle push made it shift. Behind it, hidden in a narrow cavity, was a second envelope, smaller than the first, and something wrapped in tissue. Inside the wrapping was a delicate gold necklace with an A pendant, dulled with age but unmistakably child-sized. The envelope contained a newspaper clipping, yellowed and brittle. The headline was the same one they'd seen online days earlier. Lake still holds no clues in girl's vanishing. But this copy was marked in red ink, a rough circle drawn around one particular line. Her cousin was the last to see her. No one had mentioned a cousin until now. The article didn't name her, didn't describe what she had said or done, just that she was there. They cross-referenced the obituary of the woman who owned the dresser. It mentioned no children, no siblings, no surviving relatives. But old census records revealed that she once lived in that house with a teenage niece around. The same time, Alice vanished. A cousin who was quietly removed from the story. Someone who could have seen something or done something. And now, someone who had died just weeks before the dresser was sold. It was possible that the necklace belonged to Alice, but it was equally possible that it had belonged to the cousin, worn as a keepsake, a token, or a quiet reminder. The deeper they dug, the more the lines blurred between memory and concealment. This wasn't just a forgotten tragedy. It was a layered silence, built drawer by drawer, object by object. And now it was unraveling. The house where the dresser had come from sat at the end of a quiet street lined with trimmed hedges and aging maple trees. From the outside it looked no different than any other home in the neighborhood. Pale siding, small porch, a rusted mailbox, leaning slightly to one side. It had already been cleared out by the time of the estate sale. Rooms emptied, curtains drawn, closets bare. But something about it lingered in Sarah's mind, an echo of stillness that hadn't settled right. She returned days later, standing at the edge of the front walk, staring at the windows as if someone might still be inside. The agent handling the estate reluctantly gave her access for sentimental interest, and Sarah moved through the house slowly, as if retracing the steps of someone else's memories. The living room was empty but smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs. The wallpaper had faded in spots where picture frames once hung. In the upstairs bedroom, dust coated the floor evenly, except for a trail of smaller prints leading to the closet. Inside it was nothing unusual. Wire hangers, an old shoe, a broken flashlight. But the attic door above the closet wasn't locked. Pulling it down, she climbed into the space with a flashlight in hand, the wooden ladder creaking beneath her. The attic was low and narrow, with insulation pushed to the sides, but near the far wall, behind a row of support beams, the light caught something out of place, a small wooden panel set into the wall, not nailed, just wedged in. She pulled it free. Behind it was a hollow space, dusty but undisturbed, and inside it, carefully folded and pressed into a plastic sleeve, was a child's dress. Pale cotton, stitched lace trim, a faded name tag was sewn into the collar. Alice. There was no blood, no signs of struggle, just a sense of something held too tightly for too long. Tucked beside it was a school notebook, empty except for a single page near the center. The handwriting was neat, unevenly spaced, and filled with errors, like it had been written by someone young. The words were simple. I didn't tell. I promised. That was all. No names, no dates, no other clues. But that sentence alone shifted everything. Someone had known, And someone had chosen silence. The room felt smaller now, like the walls had moved closer. Sarah left the attic slowly, her steps measured, her breath shallow. The house didn't feel like it had secrets anymore. It felt like it had already told them, and was waiting to see who would listen. It wasn't until they were preparing to move the dresser into storage that they noticed it. 4 letters carved faintly into the underside of the wood, near the back leg. AB 56. The marks were shallow, uneven, and almost invisible unless the light hit at the right angle. They had looked over the piece a dozen times before, but never from that angle. Never with the thought that the object itself might be trying to speak. It wasn't just a piece of old furniture anymore. It was a timeline, a message, a witness. The letters could only mean one thing. Alice Bennett, 1956. The dresser had been marked deliberately, and long ago, as if someone had needed to preserve that name in secret. Not for others to find, but so it wouldn't be forgotten. And now, decades later, that mark was the final breadcrumb. They took everything to the police, the photo, the necklace, the letters, the dress. An investigator agreed to reopen the cold case file. But so much time had passed. The family members were gone, or old and unwilling to speak. The cousin's name surfaced briefly in a database, but no one could confirm whether she was still alive. The notebook page was too vague to stand as testimony. And while the dress was enough to reopen memories, it wasn't enough to reopen charges. The case was now technically active, but it moved slowly, like a wheel turning through mud. Sarah kept the dresser for months, reluctant to let it go. She didn't believe in haunted objects or ghosts trapped in wood, but she did believe in weight, that things could carry memory, and sometimes that weight needed to be passed on. She would often stand in front of it at night, fingertips brushing the carved letters, wondering who had made the mark. Had it been Alice herself? A quiet message before something terrible happened? Or had someone left it afterward? Guilty, grieving, terrified. There was no answer. Not in the paper, not in the photo, not in the echoing silence left by time. Just the mark, the hidden drawer, and a house that had decided it could no longer hold the secret alone. The story wasn't solved. Not in the way people wanted. There was no villain, no courtroom, no moment of dramatic closure. Just a girl remembered, a dresser that refused to stay quiet, and a truth that rose slowly through the dust, not to accuse, but to be seen.